Tattoo Homewreckers. This time I'm the one laughing.
Because I am convinced every screen is a touch screen. And indeed, the new laptop that we got for recording is not a touch screen, but my grubby little fingers are always touching it because half of our technology is touch screen. Then we have a mouse that doesn't work, and then we have a touch screen that doesn't work, and we have a touchpad. So that's why she's currently laughing, because I'm a fucking mess.
It's okay. She was just saying that she's nervous before all of our intros, and it's fine. It's totally A-okay.
Only the intros. Once we get past the, like, hi, you're talking to, I don't know what.
You don't even know our intro? Okay, well, you know what? Welcome back to Tattoo Homewreckers, a podcast where we talk about tattoos, life, and everything in between. My name's Callista, and this is
Gaia.
And today we are talking about teenagers.
Yes.
This is the second time we've recorded this.
It is, because once again, like I said, we got a new laptop, and I didn't save the file properly, so then we didn't have it. So we are recording this the same day that we release it.
Hey, shit happens, right? And then, hopefully we'll be able to, get ahead of gun on recordings. But you know what? It's life.
Yep.
Welcome back. Let's just dive right in. We're talking about teenagers. I know I didn't ask this the first time that we were recording, but I want to ask it now. Why did you want to talk about teenagers?
Okay, so I want to talk about teenagers for a couple of things. And we're going to go ahead and get this joke right out of the gate, because everyone loves to give me a ton of shit, because I love teenagers. Specifically, I love teenage girls. There you go. Enjoy your laughter.
Ha ha ha
ha. I don't like them like that.
Weirdos.
But I just feel like when it comes to a group of people that are very much misunderstood, it is teenage girls. Along with teenage queers, absolutely. Teenage boys have their own sets of struggles. I absolutely understand that. Teenage anything has its own sets of struggles just because your brain is not done developing yet. Yeah. And the world puts you in this horrible category where you're kind of an adult, kind of not. We're going to treat you like a child, but we're going to give you the responsibilities of an adult. It's an awful time. And I talk to a lot of parents when I'm tattooing, and I hear a lot, and I hear way more with teenage girls than I ever do with teenage boys, that they are ungrateful, that they're brats, that, like, it's very seldom anything negative, anything positive. And if it is positive, it's usually based off of their accomplishment and not who they are as people.
Yeah.
So as someone who does not have kids, we will start there. Neither one of us have human babies.
No.
But I know what it's like to be a teenager, because I was a teenager.
Right.
And also I talked to quite a few teenagers, not in a weird, creepy way.
You guys
stop. But in the fact that, like, we have employees that work for the shop that are still teenagers, and then I have, like, relatives and friends that have kids.
And that's the thing, is, like, it still applies to you, even if you yourself, the listener, doesn't have a teenager right now, or doesn't plan on having a teenager. Like, I'm sure you know one. And, like,
that kind of applies to, why do you want to talk about teenagers?
Yes. I wanted to talk about teenagers too, because I find that right now I'm in this process of, they always talk about healing your inner child and never talk about healing your inner teenager. And there is so much, like, unpacked, like, just trauma and just feelings that teenage me went through that I just have not unpacked yet. And I think it's so important for all of us to kind of go back into that state, unpack that shit, heal your inner teenager, because it'll make you a better person, a better parent, a better aunt, uncle, whatever.
Yeah.
To
a better role model.
Yes. And that's kind of why I wanted to talk about them. And like you said, they're wildly misunderstood, and it's so sad. And I'm really excited to talk about this episode, because the first time we recorded it, this was before I had a session with one of my clients, and she is a therapist, and she specializes in teenagers, and she kind of talked about the science about it.
Yep. Which is what, if you guys would have heard last time, that's what I talked about. So I did a lot of talking, more so ranting about the science, which we'll get into that as well. Yes. But now it's nice, because now Callie's also caught up on that.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, barely. So. I don't know as much as you do, but how about you start off with the whole pre-cortex thing, because my language is very...
So your frontal cortex is one of the last parts of the brain to fully develop. So the way that it works is that, like, you have synapses that are firing, obviously, and you get white matter and gray matter. And as it solidifies, This is the last part, which is your logical side, the very front logical side. It's your, like, as you put it earlier, your stop and go button. It's your, like, okay, hold up, that's a bad decision. That is not developed in a teenager.
Right.
So you have this combination of high hormones. The only other time that you're going to deal with that much hormonal, like, flux is going to be menopause. So we have this massive surge of hormones. And one of the things about, like, that time is that we have more dopamine going through our bodies when we're teenagers than we ever do at any point in like life, which is why that first romance is so sweet. That first kiss is so amazing. It's not because it's your first, because if you think about it, y'all ain't nobody good at kissing the first time around.
Oh God,
it's just that, like, and lots of first times are awful, but because we have such a high amount of dopamine, it seems amazing and euphoric and phenomenal. So we have this combination of, we want to do high risk things because our peers are doing them. And if you think about it in the case of, like, we are all descendants of defiant teenagers. That's it. Because if they were not trying to push the boundaries for independence, they would never have left home. They would have never gone out and made a family of their own. So as much as, like, you're pissed off because you know a teenager and, like, they're just clapping back, they're just being sassy, they're fucking not. They don't know what's going on in their little brains. And honestly, give them some fucking grace. Because you were also a fucking teenager. And I guarantee you were worse than you remember.
Oh, yeah. Well, going back to the frontal cortex thing, that's like, you know, that's when they say you don't finish developing until you're 25. That is the part that and so here's the thing, like, my shit is still not done developing.
Nope.
You know what I mean? But, like, obviously it's so much worse in your teenage years. And I think that's where I find it funny because, like, everyone's like, yeah, teenagers are the worst. But the second that you turn, like, 20, I mean, we're still technically going through those big influx of hormones. And we've had discussions like that before where, like, feelings for me are so big sometimes. They're huge.
And then it gets so much easier the older you get. And I think everyone mistakes that just for experience and doesn't basically explain the fact that it's
like
developmental.
Science.
It's just science.
Yeah.
Like, the feelings get less big because the hormones start to subside and your frontal cortex is solid. It works. It's functioning. If you think about it like a muscle, if you have the rest of your brain is, like, up to par, it's going. So just like with working out, if I have really, really quad dominant legs, whenever I go to squat, I'm going to load my quads more than I'm going to load my glutes. And I'm just going to keep getting stronger there. And that's all that's happening is in a teenage brain is that the back portion of their brain, the, like, irrational, insane side, is stronger. So it's going to keep winning.
Yeah. All the emotions are going to be huge.
Yeah.
And like what my therapist client had said, the way she described it to me was the fact that, again, your frontal cortex, that's basically the brakes of your brain. It's the brakes, it's the stop button. So when teenagers are described as, you know, doing stuff that is irrational and or, like, incredibly impulsive, it's actually because they lack the brakes to be able to stop and be like, I shouldn't say that. Because as an adult now, I'm able to, like, I made a joke that, like, sometimes my stop button is overdeveloped. Sometimes I wish my stop button wasn't, like, so predominant. My brakes weren't so hard. So that way I could just say what I needed to say. And I'm getting better at finding that balance now. But teenagers, they just don't have that. And so when they clap back, again, it's not because they genuinely want to either. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are a few times where I clap back and I, like, meant it. But, like, there were a lot more times when I was a teenager where I said shit that I wasn't, like, meaning to say. And I highly regret it. And I'm like, oh, well, why did I do that? You know?
Well, I think that's it, is that, like, we have to give that grace to that part of them that doesn't understand why they're doing that. Because if you think about it, we give that grace to adults.
Oh, yeah.
And we also give that grace to small children. So if your if your toddler slaps you, you're like, oh, no, you can't do that. Like, don't do that. And you're still teaching. But for some reason, and I'm not saying your teenager should slap you, but if your teenager gets sassy with you, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, how could you act like that? Look at all the things I give you. All that crap of, like, let me guilt you into this, instead of being like, hey, I understand that you are so frustrated and you do not know how to communicate what you're trying to get across here. But, like, let's dial it back for a second. Let's take a breather. so I don't lose my temper, and explaining to them that like adults also lose their temper.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I love the way you said that we do give grace to people to adults when it happens then. Because even adults have outbursts.
Oh.
And then you come back and you go, okay, well, that was a thing. And then they're like, yeah, sorry. And you're able to have a conversation. And I think it's the lack of having a conversation with teenagers that really like pushes again that agenda of like, they're the worst.
Yeah.
Which they're not. They're
Yeah,
not.
I think that's the thing is there's this universal idea that they are the worst and they feel it. Because if you think about the fact that like when we are really little, like our whole world is just us. And then it becomes us and our family. And then it slowly gets larger and larger and larger. And in your teenage years is when you develop this idea of this invisible audience. So it's when you become really conscious and self-aware to be like, oh no, people are judging me, people are watching me. And some of that is true. You know, we know that like bullying goes up in middle school and high school more so than it ever was in elementary school. So that's why a lot of like the traumas that people have around like who they are themselves that come from bullying, it's from those middle school, high school years.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we also have that idea that like we have this audience that everyone is watching us and judging us. And that doesn't ever go away. It's just the older you get, the more used to that you are. And then what happens is that you talk to people, like we hear comedians making comments all the time that your 20s are for this and your 30s are for that and your 40s are for that. And by the time you reach your 40s, you're in that place of like, I don't give a fuck. It's because you finally are able to let go of that invisible audience. But also it took you 30 fucking years.
Yeah.
So maybe for those kids that are the very first time experiencing this invisible audience,
give them some grace.
Yeah,
patience,
maybe just be like, yo, that shit sucks.
Well, if you think about it, they're in the they're like in the center of the fucking tornado. You know what I mean? They're like right in the middle of the storm while you are just now getting out of the hurricane.
Yeah,
you know, like you're on the outskirts, but they're right in the middle of it, and it's so hard. And going back to that, I mean, like, there is always that saying of like, oh, well, like high school will be the worst. It won't be like high school anymore. Ugh. You know, which like we kind of talked about it, like, you know, not recording, how, you know, obviously high school culture is very toxic and it's given that reputation of being toxic because a lot of us have had the same experience. Again, all of us are going in the middle of that storm, dealing with our own shit, hurting each other because we're kids and we don't know any better. But that shit still goes into your adulthood, unfortunately. So we need to get rid of the idea that like high school that's gonna be that and the drama's gonna end there. No. Yeah. The rest of your life.
Yeah. We were talking about this. Like for me, one of the great parts about moving away from where I went to school is I don't have to run into anybody. So if I was a bitch to them, I don't have to have those awkward interactions of like, obviously, if I was a bitch to you in high school, I've done my like best to go and like individually apologize to people. I have had people over the years like come back and apologize for me. But then, you know, like we were talking earlier, I love the fact that I don't have to go to the store and run into people that I went to school with.
Yeah.
That like moments that were probably just a normal day for them were like these core memories of embarrassment and shame and trauma for me.
Yeah.
So seeing them triggers that in me, whereas they just think, oh yeah, Gaia, that was that girl that had spiked hair in school and wore Jinkos. But for me, it's that like, oh no, I remember when this one person made a comment about this one thing I was wearing.
Oh my God, right.
And it became a like horrible shaming moment.
I get flooded.
And I don't have to run into those people, so it's great.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. I mean, I'm still in the same city that I grew up in and, you know, went to high school in, and it's hard because I don't know, for a while in my apprenticeship, like I had genuinely disappeared because I was just too busy, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like I just had too much shit going on, so I like hardly talked to my old group of like friends in high school. And recently I went out with them, which is super fun, which is great because that was a positive experience. But there are a lot of things where like I've been confronted with like, oh fuck, like this person still exists. And like, that's when I started to realize like, wow, I have a lot of unhealed like trauma from high school because I do get flooded with the same feelings that I had when I was a teenager. And I think that's why I got so uncomfortable. And that's why now I'm like on this journey of unpacking things and like really trying to, I guess, heal inner teenage Callista because it's hard. Yeah. It's difficult. Like being perceived is hard, especially in high school. And I have no doubt that like, you know, the people I knew back then are like different. I would hope they are. because I'm different and we've all grown up now, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that like any of that pain truly went away, because if you don't process it, fun fact, that shit's still in there
Yeah,
in your brain just waiting to come out.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think it's just hard. I truly don't understand the whole, especially around teenage girls. I don't know if you get this a lot. I've had like male clients to me be like, "Yeah, I hope I never have a girl." Like, you know, that they
Well,
when they
yeah,
have
it's
a
that
kid.
idea that having a daughter's harder
Ugh,
that
so
pisses me off. And I'm like,
stupid.
first off, like a kid's a kid. Like you shouldn't treat your kids differently because of their gender. And I understand that we still live in an incredibly like patriarchal society that
Mhm.
treats kids differently based off of their sex and their gender.
Mhm.
And that those are different things, but everyone says, oh, you were born with a penis. Okay, well, you're a boy and you're going to act these specific ways. And then it's the same thing. And that's where they think, like, oh, I hope I never have a daughter because, like, I don't want men to, like, look at her or treat her the way I treated, like,
I get pissed too,
girls.
because a lot of the time it's like, no, but like what if my daughter's like, you know, sleeping around? And I'm like, why the fuck is that even what if your son's sleeping around? Why the fuck is that a concern to
Mhm.
you? It's just fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I think it goes also back to the idea that people think that all teenagers are only pursuing sex because adults,
Right.
especially in this culture, very much commodify. I can't say that fucking word
You're
now.
good.
Like it takes sex and says, hey, we're gonna make this. It's that puritanical belief that we're gonna make this a commodity.
Mhm.
So we are gonna punish you for thinking about it. We're gonna make you pay for it though. So the very fact that like people pay to see pictures of me is ridiculous.
Mhm.
Thanks for anyone that does. I appreciate it. But like also y'all know it's just a place of chaos. But the very fact that like people will pay just to see like a picture of your boobs
Mhm.
because we cannot live in a world that's like, hey, bodies are just bodies and they're allowed to just be bodies.
Mhm.
But we think that everything is about sex. So we think like, oh, you hug someone for 1 second longer than I think is appropriate, you must be thinking about sex. And we
Mhm.
do the same thing with kids when like your 12, 13, even 14-year-old is not out there like, yo, let me figure out how I can fuck.
Mhm.
Like they're not. They're still very much children, but everyone says, oh, they're teenagers, so that's the only thing they're thinking about. When it's like, no, if you just have real conversations, you can be like, oh, you're probably not there.
Yeah, and
If you actually listen to them and their friends when they're talking about like her little boyfriend or her little girlfriend, they're not thinking about like boyfriends and girlfriends in the terms that we think of boyfriends and girlfriends, where it's like, okay, so you guys are like in a committed relationship. No, it's all play pretend.
Mhm.
But parents especially have this hard time because they are in that world of protection and always catastrophizing it all to be like, this is the worst case scenario, which is part of being a parent.
Right.
But it also means like giving that grace to be like, yeah, but like, is your kid actually sexually active?
Yeah, being able to let go of that, like also that weird. I mean, I get it. The transition is really hard because you're getting to know your kid as your kid is truly developing their personality.
Yeah.
And when they're younger, aka pre-teen years, you know, they don't have that individual mindset yet. I feel like a lot of the times they haven't like really developed their whole personality yet. You'll get whispers here and there for sure, but like when they're a teenager, then they really start exploring facets of their personality. They really go through. That's why like everyone's like, oh well, it could be a phase, it could not be a phase. You know what I mean? Like I like delved into exploring what it was like being like a really girly girl, like a Bratz doll, and like I, you know, here and there I do enjoy being more feminine. Here and there I'm starting to enjoy being more like masculine. But like parents need to let go of that like resistance, you know. And I think that's one of the things that my mom did really well was there was no resistance whenever I was changing my look or doing anything like that. It was just like okay, well, that's how she wants to dress now.
Well, I think it's also just generally rude, this whole concept of like, okay, well, that's just a phase. Because like I had that even like I started coloring my hair at 12. And everyone's like, oh, you'll change your mind. That's just a phase. One day you're going to look back at these pictures and be so embarrassed. Like, you know what?
That's such a rude thing to say, too.
It's fucking rude.
It's so
you know
rude.
what, Karen? I think one day you're going to look back on your fucking bleach blonde hair and your massive chunky highlights and be like, wow, you should be embarrassed. No, I still dress the fucking same in so many ways. We went to the store earlier and so many fashions that I wore in middle school and high school are coming back. Genuinely stoked. We were talking about the fact that I don't understand where people are like, oh my God, I can't believe that's coming in. Bitch, I am stoked. I get to like refresh my closet with all of my like favorite styles. Yes, please.
Yeah, I think
so. Stop assuming everything is a phase.
Well, for me, it's like one day, Karen, you're going to look back on like these photos or like look back on the people who are out there going through air quotes phases. And you're going to wish that you explored a little bit more, you know, you're going to wish that, I mean, shit, there's a reason why like women, a lot of the times when they get into their like 70s and 80s, start getting tattooed for the first time and coloring their hair.
Yeah. Because they finally have permission.
Because they feel like, oh shit, you know what? I don't fucking care. I'm going to fucking do this. This is my life. And like, here's my goal is to make sure that I'm not trying to like speed out of the hurricane per se, but I am trying to get closer to that goal of just being in peace with like, this is my life and this is how I'm going to craft it and getting rid of that audience.
Yeah.
And it is hard for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, even when you talk about like your high school days, you'll talk about how like you thought people didn't like you. But then if I talk to people you went to high school with, everyone fucking loved you.
It was so funny. Oh, did we lose audio or
we just lost video, so we will be right back, y'all. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be back in just 1 second.
This episode is brought to you by Captain Callista's Fish Sticks. Are you tired of fish sticks being made out of one type of fish, or worse yet, not knowing the fish your fish stick is made out of? Well, here at Captain Callista's, we offer our fish sticks in a multitude of fish flavors for your sophisticated palate. Our fish sticks include whale, seal, manatee, sea cucumber, sea turtle, and 100% white meat starfish. Visit your local grocery store and ask for Captain Callista's Fish Sticks today.
Hi,
we're back. Okay, so we were talking about Callista having, like your perception of people not liking you in high school.
Yes. We were indeed talking about that. I had convinced myself in high school that like I was just the fucking worst, and I don't know. I had really low self-esteem in high school, as I think a lot of us did. And it's so funny because I was hanging out with some of my the old high school group that I hung out with, and one of them was all like, yeah, we were just making jokes and talking about how we're all like menaces to society, and she was just like, yeah, I mean, Callie, you've always been like super sweet, and then I had to take a moment and I looked around and I said, who are you talking to? She's like, yeah, you were always sweet. I said, who? Who are you talking to? And she's like, you. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I don't know. I just like had it convinced in my brain that like I was just the fucking worst person. Just the worst.
Well, I think that's like, we all tend to do that with like our teenage years. And just like, I think a lot of people are harder on themselves than they like should be, and especially looking back, because that's where the invisible audience comes in of like, oh no, everyone hated me, and I'm like, I fucking doubt that.
No,
and I
absolutely.
think that's also where like having some space between like teenage years and like high school and middle school and stuff, because like for me, middle school was definitely harder than high school, so like that was my time where it was like a lot of like struggle. But by the time high school came around, it was just like whatever, like it was just I don't know, like a prison sentence at that point. Because I really did believe the like, cool, I'm going to get out of this place. I'm not going to fucking see these people anymore. And I did not realize that life is always going to be full of people that you can't stand.
Yeah, it's
so,
hard. People who are mean.
I believed that.
Absolutely.
That lie that like, oh yeah, after high school, like it's totally fine. And it is to a certain degree, because like, yeah, you have to like work with people you don't like, and you have to be on the road with people you don't like. You're in like grocery stores with people that you want to like punch in the face.
Yeah.
But you at least as an adult can, for the most part, a lot of times remove yourself. Where like, yeah, when you're a teenager, you're stuck. You're stuck in that same lunchroom with that jackass. And like, I don't know about you, but like I heard it a lot. Like, you know, my teenage years, like any turmoil that like me and my mom had. Was very much based on like, okay, well, that's your relationship with her. You need to fix that.
Mm.
Instead of being like, you're a child, she's an adult. How about she addresses that?
Absolutely. She's the one with the fully formed brain.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, only one of us here has a fully formed brain. And I think that, like, that's another one of those things that, like, teenagers are really tough with that, because oftentimes when you make a small mistake, it's seen as a massive mistake. Because I'm sure you've heard this before, where it's like, oh, well, this is going to affect the rest of your life. Y'all, if you're a teenager and you're in school, grades are not that big of a deal. Just pass.
Yeah.
Just fucking pass. Unless you are going to college and you need a scholarship, just pass your fucking classes.
Yeah, and the whole, I mean, shit, I don't know what it's like in other states. Obviously, I've only gone to school in Nevada. But, like, the whole AP thing was just bullshit. Like, the honor classes, they were complete just bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, a bunch of colleges will make you retake those classes anyways.
Yeah, most colleges will.
Yeah.
I took those classes. So I got stuck on that loop in middle school.
Mm.
I took classes in middle school that were supposed to count towards high school credits.
Mm.
They fucking didn't.
Right.
Then I still, because I was dumb and fucking believed them, was like, okay, I'm going to take AP classes and I'm going to bust my ass. And I worked so hard. And then I got to college and they're like, no, ma'am.
You know
You
what?
need to take all those again.
I applaud myself as a sophomore, because I think my sophomore year of high school, I was taking a bunch of more honors classes than I wasn't. And after sophomore year, I was like, I'm not doing that again. If I'm going to take an honors class, it's just going to be what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be one. And it was just English. And then I said regular classes for the rest of the time, because it was so much stress for me. Not only just like, we were teenagers and we were already dealing with like all the emotions ever, but like added on to that was just like the academic stress of like, oh fuck, these classes are a lot more intense. Like there's a lot more to put in. And I just didn't think it was worth it. So I just didn't do it. And lo and behold, that ended up paying off.
Yeah, because it's not fucking worth it.
Yeah, no, for
Like,
sure.
at all.
Obviously, do well in school, but like, yeah, definitely. I mean, shit, that was such a scam. Why did we pay so much money to do that? Pay so much money to get into those tests. And for what? For what? They ended up not even like really, getting you out of any other classes. Like,
Nope.
Yeah, total
Yeah,
bullshit.
you worked your ass off just to be in the same classes with everyone else.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I always hear this too. We're gonna kind of circle back to the whole idea that like, high school culture, it still kind of follows. There's a reason why a bunch of people, when drama goes down into their lives, they're like, what is this, high school?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is forever,
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
genuinely.
Yes.
It's forever. You're going to deal with those people forever. And I think the only solace I can give is that obviously if it gets bad enough, you can remove yourself. Whereas like I got really like bullied in school a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's hard to believe because I'm so cool now. But I was before my time. People did not appreciate me at that point.
Yeah, you're truly ahead.
Yeah, I was just cruising, with my Johnny Bravo look over here.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, that like you can, at least as an adult, like you're able to remove yourself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, like, nah, bitch, it's pretty much the same. The only like solace I can give is that like genuinely once you're past your mid-20s, especially if you're doing your mental work, life is so good.
Yeah.
Y'all,
and that's
so good.
Again, that high stress on like, again, that's only if you're doing the work
Mhm.
upstairs. And by
Yeah.
doing the work, I mean like truly understanding like who you are as a human being, trying to be as
Mhm.
authentic as possible, and just, I don't know, doing your best to mature and come into adulthood as gracefully as possible. I mean, shit.
But by mature, she doesn't mean rush through it. Like,
No. Mm-mm.
explore like all facets. If you're like, you know what, I want to try, dressing super femme. I want to fucking cut all my hair off. Anything you want to fucking do it. And every person that tells you that one day you're going to look back on those photos and like regret whatever body modification you did to yourself, fuck them. If
Yeah.
they want to live their life with regrets, cool, that's on them. Because if I'm being completely honest, there's maybe like 3 photographs that I look back and I'm like, what the fuck? And that was literally just because like my parents give me a bowl cut.
Oh my
Like,
God.
yeah, that was just terrible. And that's on them, dude.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
on the hairstylist I went to and my mom for being like, yeah, you're going to look awesome.
It's French.
Literally had a bowl cut. Yeah. Like look like a pencil. It was terrible. That's about it. Everything that I decided
Yeah.
always, still I look back and I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Good job, you. You were like living your authentic life.
Yeah, that's my thing. And like it does get easier. I mean, the drama cliques are still a very real thing. Out in the adult world, it's still very real.
In a gym, in a workplace.
And people will always, there will always be some kind of like invisible hierarchical structure that people are trying to follow. And it is up to you on whether or not you choose to play the game anymore. And I think that's the thing is like, that's the biggest thing that has set me free in my early 20s is choosing not to play the fucking game.
Yeah.
Removing myself from, again, like this invisible popularity
But I think
contest.
it's being aware that there is a game. Because I think that's the problem. Like, I was aware by high school, which is why high school didn't bother me. Because I had friends that had graduated and, like, my boyfriend all throughout high school wasn't in school. So I knew that I was like, cool, like, this shit ends.
Yeah.
So I didn't play the game. And then as an adult, I'm very much like, I'm not playing this game with you. Like, I'm running my own race. And, you know, and so, like, being aware that it is a game, but also, like, for parents out there, being aware that when your kid is in school, they don't have a choice. They have to play the game.
Yeah. It's
just
for
like
survival.
You play the game at work. I guarantee that Nancy, one office over, who's got the laugh that you want to fucking, like, just shove knives in your ears if you have to listen to one more time, your kids are doing the same thing. So, like, the same frustrations you have, but amplified, because they are feeling everything bigger at that point. And try your best to not just look back on your teenage years and be like, oh my God, I was so good. You know you weren't. You know that, like, it was just as hard. Remember how many times you cried yourself to sleep because you could not figure out why you called your best friend fat. Because she's not fat. And you didn't mean it, but you said it. And now you feel so guilty. And no one's giving you the language to know how to apologize. Because that's something that most people don't learn until they're adults. So instead of punishing this, like, baby brain and then having to, like, deal with the repercussions of that, maybe just give them more examples of, like, dude, when I was in school, it sucked. And I'm sure it's not much better for you. Honestly, it's probably worse because you have social media.
Yeah.
Because at least I didn't have fucking social media.
Dude, it was fucking rough. Like, so much pressure. Again, I think growing up with social media really did amplify the idea of an invisible audience. But it was so much worse because it gave you numbers.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Well, I think the problem with social media is you can't just not have social media, like, in this day and age.
No.
Unless you just want your kid to be, like, ostracized.
Well, I mean, now it's also considered a red flag, right? Like, after seeing that movie fucking Fresh with Sebastian Stan in it, now I don't trust a motherfucker. I used to be like, oh, I love it when guys don't have social media. No, now I'm like, I don't trust you. Yeah. Are you a serial killer?
Super
Who the
weird.
fuck are you? Yeah.
So, like, well, and you can't be a teenager without it, but then now it isn't an invisible audience. It's an actual freaking audience.
Yes, and you get numbers. You get data correlating to how popular you are, how wanted you are, whatever the fuck, you know what I mean, how accepted you are. And, like...
And you don't have the tools mentally to deal with that. So as a, like, parent or a role model or somebody who knows teenagers, it's your job to basically be their support team. Like, that's it. They're just there to amp them up and be like, hey, I got you.
Yep.
This sucks. I promise. Like, especially, like, when we first started and you were 19 and everything was massive. And I would just be like, I swear to God, it does get easier. Like, how big all of these motions are, they go down. They dampen.
And I was still, like, I mean, even as a 19-year-old, I would still say I was, like, on the upper percentage of, like, people who are more emotionally intelligent. But I was still figuring it out. And we talked about this in our first episode. How difficult it was, like, when I was a teenager, I would know that I was upset and I would know that I felt icky, but I wouldn't be able to tell you if I was angry, if I was feeling betrayed, if I was sad, or if I was horny. I genuinely would have, but I would know that I felt some type of way. And you know how hard it is, like, being coherent but not at the same time?
Because you don't have the language.
Exactly. And also just you were flooded. Like, you're getting flooded as a teenager. You're basically just talking to a human being who is constantly overstimulated, you know?
Yes, and that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, don't punish them for that. And I know it's hard, but, like, again, if you're ever dealing with, like, any kind of strife with a teenager that you know, just, you know, sit back and realize, like, okay, which one of us has the more developed brain in this situation?
And those, like, when it comes to parents and teen, only one person's a fucking adult. Stop blaming the child. Because honestly, like that, it drives me absolutely bonkers. And I'm not saying that they can just commit murder and do anything and be insane, but I think that just looking at stuff as an educational time frame is going to be the best thing to do.
Yes.
Is just to like give them grace. So my one last question for you as we wrap up this episode is, if you could give 16-year-old you any advice, what would it be?
Okay, mine's going to sound shallow right now, if I'm going to be shallow. I would tell her, girl, keep drawing. Because I think one of the biggest regrets I had was I stopped drawing because it wasn't the cool thing to do. And that's really sad to me. Yeah, it was such a big part of my life.
Yeah.
So I would tell her to keep drawing, and that things will get easier.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would tell her, dude, stop worrying about school. I swear to God, it's not that big of a deal.
You lost so many hours of sleep and you cried so many tears over tests.
Worked so hard.
Yeah.
And like eventually I do want to go back to school to get my doctorate, but like, I don't know, school now just doesn't seem that fucking serious.
Yeah.
And so I would just be like, you know what? If you fucking fail something, it's okay. You are not a failure, and failing is part of life.
I love that.
And that, like, it means nothing. It just means that, like, maybe you were tired. Maybe that subject is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Because there's so much shit that we spend time worrying about as teenagers when it comes, especially for me for school, was
for sure.
awful. Because I was dealing with being, like, really heavily bullied and then trying to be a perfect student so I could earn my parents' love. And so I think that I would just be like, hey, you know what? You're really fucking cool. And in 10 years, people are going to you don't know about social media yet because it doesn't exist, 16-year-old Gaia. But by the time you hit 26, you're going to talk to a bunch of people that you went to school with. And the whole reason why they didn't talk to you is because they were intimidated. And
Crazy.
that is going to be an ongoing problem for the rest of your life. But here's the thing. You're fucking cool.
Yes, I would tell that to
tell her.
16-year-old Callista as well. She needed to hear that, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, if you guys want to give us a shout, we would love to hear what you would say to 16-year-old you and like what struggles you had. We're probably going to come back and do another episode on teenagers as we do a little bit more like diving within ourselves to heal our own wounds. Mine is 12-year-old Gaia always.
For sure. Mine is 16, 17-year-old Callista.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ouch. Those were tough years for you, girl.
Yeah. And so we would love to hear what you guys have to say to your 16, 17, or, 12, 13, whatever, your old self. We love you guys, and we will see you guys next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye. The wrong button every time.